Welcome, everybody. It is now time for our mental health podcast of the week. We have some pretty big topics to talk about tonight. One is going to be the autism spectrum, and another one is going to be the panic disorder. So stay tuned as we get in depth with all these things and we move forward with some of the statistics that I'm sure this lovely lady has for us right here, because she is our research and our backbone to what keeps all the information coming through here. So with further ado, this is Mrs. Wi-Fi, as you guys all know, and let's start the day.
So we'll start with the autism spectrum disorder. Oh, sorry, things are popping up on my screen. Okay. So autism spectrum disorder is a neurological and a developmental disorder that affects how people interact with others, communicate, learn, and behave. Autism can be diagnosed at any age, but it's described as a developmental disorder because it generally starts to appear at younger ages, typically the first 2 years of life.
Okay.
So this doesn't mean you can't be diagnosed later in life, but typically you can start to notice those first 2 years of life.
Okay, and that's when they usually do a lot of the research for it, right, and studies in the children.
We'll get more into it. So typically for younger boys, a lot of the research is done in that first 2 years. So for girls and women, a lot of the research is done later because women girls and women tend to be diagnosed later in life because it is seen differently and diagnosed differently in women.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, anybody can get autism. It's also known as a spectrum disorder because there's such a wide variety in the type and severity of symptoms that people experience.
Okay.
And that's because it is with communication, interactions. It can come from restricted interest and repetitive behaviors, symptoms that affect their ability to function in school, work, or other areas of life. So we've talked about this too. This kind of interacts with different disorders that we've talked about throughout the weeks. So it's kind of hard to decipher whether it is maybe can intertwine with OCD. Ben picked this out the last time we were on, OCD and autism kind of sound like the same thing.
Right.
So you have to make sure you're diagnosing the same or the right repetitive behaviors for autism versus OCD or vice versa. And then there's different types of tics for anxiety disorders that can kind of overlap into autism as well.
Okay, so we found out last week, our last show, that OCD only affects 2%, right? 2% of the population has been diagnosed with OCD. So the numbers are a lot higher for autism.
Yes. Pretty sure I have those later in here.
Okay.
But yes, the numbers are drastically higher compared to
OCD.
OCD.
Okay. And we do have a member in chat right now that does have autism and ADHD. So I told them if they have anything that we don't cover and they'd like to share, please do.
Yeah, of course.
He said it could also affect on family life, and when people, i.e. gaming, we get hyper focus on it due to hyper focus of autism. Understanding. That's one of the things that I'm sure you're going to touch on.
Yep. Not in this packet, but the next one. So one of the signs or symptoms of autism, social communication, interaction behaviors may include making little or inconsistent eye contact. So I want to make sure when I talk about these ones are based more on how they diagnose males.
Males, okay.
Making little or inconsistent eye contact, and this is on like the higher level of the spectrum.
Okay.
Appearing not to look at or listen to people who are talking. So it doesn't mean they're not listening, they just kind of look like they're not listening. Infrequently sharing interest, emotion, or enjoyment of objects or activities. Not responding or being slow to respond to one's name or to other verbal bids for attention.
Okay.
Having difficulties with the back and forth of conversations, so they're kind of like processing what's being said. So they're trying to like plan out or understand or truly take in what's being said before they're responding back.
Which is like complete opposite of ADHD for that fact, because a lot of people with ADHD tend to try to jump ahead of the conversation. So
Often talking at lengths about a favorite subject without noticing that others are not interested or without giving others a chance to respond. So it's kind of like an interesting, like, they are very hyper focused on that one thing, so they're going to take off. They know so much about it, they're going to share every single thing that they do know about it. Displaying facial expressions, movements, or gestures that do not match what is being said.
okay.
So kind of like their emotion doesn't match what's being shown. Having an unusual tone of voice that may sound sing-song or flat or like a robot.
Okay.
Having trouble understanding other person's point of view or being unable to predict or understand other people's actions. Another one's difficulties adjusting behaviors to social situations. So they kind of can't read a room, so they have a hard time like adjusting to or reading their surroundings. So
Okay.
they tend to kind of like stay out of the social situations. Difficulties in sharing. So a lot of these were kind of like, it could be an older person or a younger person, and then this one's difficulty in sharing in imaginative play or in making friends. So that was kind of the social settings. And then restrictive or repetitive behaviors may include repeating certain behaviors or having unusual behaviors, such as repeating words or phrases.
Yes, I do know that. A friend's son is huge in movie quotes and movies, and that's all like that happens through and through that. So
Having a lasting, intense interest in specific topics, such as numbers, details, or facts.
yeah.
Um, then people on the autism spectrum also may have strengths, including like using like those interests. They kind of excel in those areas, so they tend to like lean towards like maybe careers in those areas that they kind of excel in. So you'll see actually a lot of people with autism that do really well in math and science. Actually, a lot of them become engineers, depending on where they lie on that like spectrum.
Yep.
They also are very strong visual or audio learners.
Okay.
So they can't really like just, they have to be able to see it or hear it. And like a lot of people, they have to like see it and hear it together. They can't just see like one or the other. They have
Okay.
to like put it together. It makes sense.
It makes sense. It does make sense. Just the way they are learning.
So just like a lot of the other ones as well, if you go into like the causes or factors to what causes autism, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, there's so many different things that they say could cause it. It's having a genetic disorder, kind of like Down syndrome, having a Fragile X syndrome. It could even be something as small as like being born as a low birth weight.
Okay.
It also can be an environmental thing that can cause you to end up on the spectrum. So it's like they don't really know what causes it, but they can say like it kind of goes it just causes you to have these symptoms, and it causes your brain to develop onto that spectrum.
Understood. We had Demon also comment again. He said, "So like myself, when I am streaming, it's weird because I can communicate with everyone good, but at the same time, I can freak out if it gets busy. So good to communicate and chill, and then if things start to pop off, it might go into a little of a panic mode and try to take care of everything all at once. When sometimes it's not that easy for everybody, right?"
Might be just like that comfortable, you're used to the setting you're in, and then when that setting changes, you're not as, I don't want to say you're not comfortable, but your brain kind of changes with that. When things do change around you, you're not as used to that scenario. So maybe that is part of the panic mode a little bit. I think that was it in this packet.
Okay.
And then talking about a lot, the beginning of this was there is differences between the autism based on gender, between boys and girls.
Okay.
So
You said that the ones that we just touched on were more based off of male diagnosis
yes.
and statistics. Okay.
Um, so there are higher, like there's evidence that there's higher diagnosis in males just because all that the younger, like when you're a kid, everything is based more on the male, like they're able to see that stuff pretty like easier.
Okay.
So girls are typically diagnosed
Later on.
much later in
Okay.
life than boys, and it's because oh, girls on the spectrum, they lack awareness of the need for social interaction, so they're kind of a little more like out there, and that's not like in a bad way. They're kind of just like the social butterflies. They're not aware of kind of that standing out thing that a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to stand out, or they're kind of just like truly who they are.
Right.
um they do have a tendency, like they're able to be a chameleon though. They can, so they're out there, but then if they notice that they're out there, they can instantly like come back. So that's why it's like they have to be a little older to be able to be diagnosed and see that happening. So they're out there, and then you can see them start to pull back into their situation. They can camouflage them into different groups, so they can fit in this group, they can fit in that group, and they do it pretty seamlessly because they're like, oh, I'm this person, I'm this person, I'm this person.
Wow. It's kind of crazy to think about because like you see it in so many people that are able to do that in the military, right? How they can adapt to the situation and change to the situation that they need at hand. But from the outside looking in, if you know that person, you know that's not truly the person they are, but they're doing what they have to adapt.
Mm-hmm. um Girls that have autism, when they get a little older, they tend to be more intense or possessive in a way of friendships. So once they find like a good friend, they're very possessive of that person. They also have like an advanced language skill for their age. So if you see like somebody that has like a woman that tends to, so typically when you see somebody on the spectrum, they're really good at math and science. Like that tends to be like where they go. Like that's usually what they're really good at. But it's quite opposite for women. They're usually very good, and they have a very broad range of vocabulary. They can talk really well. They're like very well spoken. Um, they also have a good range and frequency of nonverbal communication. I'm not 100% sure what this means. I'm not sure if they're just good at like understanding other people, like they have that empathetic like part to them.
Sorry, just found out that we did get accepted into the F3 family.
Congrats.
Thank you. kind of huge for me. It's another. Everybody's in chat talking about it. A little distracted.
Ooh.
My bad.
No, you're good. I can see your like face kind of
Perk up a little bit. Yeah.
just marking. So same for women too. When they get older, they can kind of blend into their surroundings, but they also still have like a bold personality. Like they kind of know who they are, but they can step back into the scenario that they need to. They can be who they need to be in that moment.
The chameleon thing to me just blows my mind. And even Demon Killer said the military is perfect for him because of the structure. And it's
I think that's the
one thing that I'm curious about is like the severity, how little they might have and how much autism it can affect them differently is what just blows my mind.
and I think it's why it's hard to like talk about because you can talk about like the lower end of the spectrum where it's like just very little and it can just be like a sensory touch kind of throws you off a little bit and it, like irritates you, or a sensory touch like somebody touches you and it just like literally just sends you overboard and into like a rage. Because those are things too with an autism, because sensory stuff can overload somebody with autism as well, but it also depends on where they fall on the spectrum. So there's like that, but that also depends on who you are and where you fall. But then you can also be high on the spectrum and sensory doesn't bother you at all. You can be a very touchy-feely person, but noise bothers you.
Noise, okay.
And
That's why autism's such a
it's
broad spectrum that it so many different things can fall into it, and I think that's amazing because it just blows my mind that a lot of people probably walk around with it and don't even know they have it.
like another note I made for like women because you were talking about the chameleon thing.
Mm.
Women when they get older, they get, and it's not even like they get good at it. It's just their brain starts to develop in ways where to be that chameleon, they can imitate gestures and expressions that they see other people use all the time. Like they see like that works. So they're just like, oh, that's what I have to do. That's what
Yeah,
the world sees as okay. So like that's what I'm going to start doing. So they'll just start imitating that.
that makes
That's where
sense.
that's
It's the chameleon thing.
social. Yeah, the social behavior is where women tend to get diagnosed with autism. But again, like they can get diagnosed at a younger age if it comes down to like the noise or sensory.
Demons. So for me, I work pubs and clubs where I am in food area and be fine with it. When I go shopping and it's busy, I freak out. Okay, so your environment though, do you surround yourself with that environment you do feel comfortable in, right? And then when you get outside that environment where you can't control maybe everything or know what's gonna happen, you don't feel so comfortable. That's understandable.
Um, so again, it's just like how the where you fall on that spectrum, and then which parts of the autism parts that affect you, I guess.
Right. So yeah.
uh,
Oh, in the loud area. Okay, understood. Yeah. But no, that's when you brought this one up, it was kind of one of those things I looked into a little bit and I just was so like lost in what I thought I knew about autism. But I had no clue that it was so deep and so broad with everything and it could affect what is it, 1 in 150 is the stat is what they say, right? I think
yes,
that's the
or
number
one
that
in
I
one seven
it
seventy
might have went
five
up.
or
Yeah. It's
one in
not a
50, something like
yeah.
that.
So as crazy as it is, like you think about OCD with a 2%, and then you got 1 in 1, we'll say 1 in 200 even, is still crazy difference. So I didn't know it was so deep.
And it's so particular to the person too. Again, that's where it comes down to
It is that person. So its
it's
individuality and
like
everything is continued on through even autism, right?
are like again, is it like a noise thing for you? Is it a sensory overload for you? Is it both? Like, because people can be affected by more than one. People are affected by just one. Is it, um, like I'm saying, like a lot of the diagnostic criteria for autism has been based predominantly for males' experiences. So, like, when the women come in and, like, how do you put it in favor of women to kind of try to understand where they fall into this? Because if you look at other studies too, like your hormones play a part into it. So
Crazy to think
when
about
you're,
too.
because there's like a part in here, because social drive plays a part into it, your types of interest, your camouflaging tactics, um, your response to social pressures, which Demon was kind of like talking about, like you're okay in some areas and then okay, not okay in some others. But then hormones also play a part into it. So like women go through these hormonal changes every week. So that affects, if you're on the autism spectrum as a woman, each week you're also going through a change with this part of your brain as well.
Crazy.
So like you're also having to take that into a matter of fact to like, how does this affect that person? Because men go through hormonal changes too, just not as frequently. So like you're gonna have those changes within how not even just this disorder, but all disorders are affecting you as your body's going through those hormonal changes as well.
I don't know if I'd want to be a female with autism. I'm sorry. Like it's already hard to deal with in the beginning, and then you now go through weekly changes, and you really don't know what's gonna come of it because your hormones control a lot more than I couldn't imagine. What about even a pregnant woman with autism? Oh my lord, not it. Help me out on that one, guys. I yeah,
Um, so like it does go deeper into all that, and again, it depends on where you fall on the spectrum. It depends on what affects you within that spectrum. Then again, it depends on where your hormones fall within that week, and then it depends also like where your environments are changing.
okay.
Because if you can keep a constant environment, then you're good with, you know exactly what's going to happen. But if you're always in a constantly changing environment, then
I
your mind's always.
I do know that uh, routine is huge with my cousin who has a son that is autistic. If they get up in the morning and they don't do the exact same thing every morning, it can be a struggle. And they have to like basically talk them through everything and go through with it so they know exactly, announce like, hey, this is what we're doing next. This is what we're doing. And if they change that any little bit, it becomes a little bit harder for them that day. And they might break down and throw a fit or like just shut down completely. And I've lived it with them a couple times, and I'm just like, man, I'm sorry that you have this, but he's a very good father, does what he has to do, and he never like, as hard as it would be, he's never like completely lashed out or broken down because he knows that the kid has really no control over any of it.
And that's,
So,
I think that's the biggest thing is like when I was doing the research, is like there's no true part that they can understand why the brain like does it. There's
mhm,
no like true answer to say like this part of the brain is saying do this when that happens, or there's no like, I could say when something happens and you go into a trauma response for PTSD, the amygdala is what goes on fire. Like the
right.
amygdala is sending all these, but like when they do studies on people with autism, it's like always like a different part of the brain. So it's not like a again, it's like very individualized to the person of like this person, like for this person, like this part of the brain lights up, like this part of the brain, this person lights up. So it's not like a single part of the brain that's saying like, hey, I don't even want to say like damaged, but like has something going on because
Right.
with everyone it's different.
Understand. Juice Jam said, autism or not, sensory overload is so big nowadays with all the social media, instant gratification, stimulation, music change, TV change. I notice it in myself, but huge in my wife and my 4-year-old boy. This little guy goes crazy if he watches TV or watches shows too long, and it's way worse with YouTube channels. Kids like shit. My kids every night they know that they gotta go to bed, but it's like a constant battle. The same routine every night, same time, same everything, and it's still sometimes a battle. And like you said, autism or not, it's sensory overload is true. So that might be something we could touch on later outside of the autism spectrum, that like sensory could be way broader than autism.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I get sensory overload all the time and I'm like, all right, I gotta shut off everything I gotta like turn off the lights to be able to hear.
I don't remember, I did something not too long ago, and I think I turned the music down in the car to smell something, and somebody was like, "You okay?" I was like, "What?" They're like, "You turned the music down," and I was like,
I,
"I can smell better.
my
What do you mean?"
my brain's overloaded.
I was taking one sense out to help the other one. That's all I'm doing here. Juice said yes. I'd tune in for that. Yeah, we can. That'd be something we'll take notes on, Juice, and we'll do that for another one.
I think that's all I had for autism, just because it is such a.
Did you have any more statistics for that?
No, just kind of
Okay,
giving the breakdown of
like autism, the
this is.
spectrum, males, females, and like their little niches. Their
Mhm.
chameleon type. Females are more chameleon than men, I believe, in that
Yes.
situation. So
Women are definitely more chameleons than men, and then like men are a little more like, I don't know how to like describe them.
I
But
think they're a little more. We'll just put them as they're more open. How about that? You said they shared like details that with random strangers, and they just keep holding the conversation even though nobody's listening. So
uh,
Muffin said device limitation is, in my opinion, is necessary, which is 1000% why I think Apple and these people have this thing called screen time, right? You can limit that. Do that not only in the kids but yourself. You know, your device management is huge for your mental. It really is. So that was the autism spectrum.
and we can
And
always revisit this later and go deeper into it if we want to like go further down like a specific path of it. This was just like a broad
this is
entry of
just
it.
a an overview, we'll call it, of everything. And then the next one is going to be panic disorder, guys.
Yeah, so panic disorder falls under a diagnostic class of anxiety disorders. Um, Panic disorder is known as like, how do I want to describe it? Well, first, 1 out of 75 people have experienced this.
1 out of 75.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay.
People with panic disorder have frequent and unexpected panic attacks. These attacks are characterized as or by a sudden wave of fear or discomfort or a sense of losing control when there is no clear danger or trigger.
Okay.
So essentially, like your body's getting sent into like a trauma response, and there's no reason to have one.
Okay. So again, another thing that kind of touches on something else we've talked, is we find out every time we do these that they all somehow like relate to each other somewhere down the line.
So panic disorder is essentially when you have these panic attacks, which are a sudden surge of overwhelming fear that comes without warning or without any obvious reason. It is far more intense than a feeling of being stressed out. So you have like the racing of the heartbeat, difficulty breathing. You can even get to a point where you feel like you can't breathe at all. Terror that's almost paralyzing, dizziness. You can almost get to a point where you feel like you're nauseous or going to throw up. You're trembling, sweating, shaking. You can have chest pains, hot flashes. The hot flashes can actually switch to cold chills, so your body's just going through like this sudden like change. It doesn't really know what it's doing. You can experience tingling in your fingers and toes, kind of like pins and needles. Fear that you're going to go crazy. With this, you're probably gonna recognize, like I just mentioned, like the classic fight or flight response. But
Yep.
during this, you really have no reason to feel this. Like that's why you start to feel like you're going crazy, because you're like, there's no imminent danger to you. There's no reason for you to feel it. These come up and occur without any warning, and there's typically no way to stop it. The level of fear is way out of proportion for the situation. It passes within a few minutes, but it can keep recurring for a few hours.
Okay. Which,
So that's what kind of takes it from just being a regular panic attack and kind of throws you into the actual panic disorder, because you're having these reoccurring and it's happening all the time.
reoccurring. Okay, yeah. So they last a couple of minutes, but can be up to a couple hours with reoccurring.
So then these panic attacks that turn into this panic disorder can actually turn into phobias, where people kind of take themselves out of any of these situations that kind of can throw them into it, or they think they can avoid it so that they don't experience it again. So it's kind of like they don't know what causes it, so they're like, oh, I was driving when this happened, so I'm not going to drive again.
So they try to relate it to.
Yeah, they try to find something that related to it so they can avoid that feeling, so it turns into like a phobia of whatever it might be.
I had this. I can relate to this because I was like, I think I was 12 years old, and I got pneumonia. And for some odd reason, I attached it to Italian dressing from a restaurant. So I stopped eating Italian dressing for like 4 years. I was like, I'm never eating that stuff again because that's what gave me pneumonia. But really, it was just pneumonia.
Mm-hmm. So you like essentially turned it into phobia that it was
Yeah.
a panic attack that started turning into like a disorder, and then you turn it into a phobia of Italian dressing.
Yeah, Italian dressing can F off. Eat it now. It's good now.
Um, so what can cause this? It's mind, body, or both. So your body may genetically just be more easily thrown into anxiety disorders. So it could be genetically passed down. So like your family can have genetics that kind of just pass down to you that kind of makes you susceptible to being more prone to having anxiety disorders, and that could have just been reason why you are more susceptible to developing a panic disorder. Panic disorders could also be due to like a biological malfunction within your body. So that could be like a mutation within your genes that didn't necessarily come from your parents or somewhere in your family. It could have just been something that happened. Also, for unknown reasons, women are twice as likely to get the disorder as men.
Women are twice as likely, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So today's been more of a female side of things because you always say that majority of, we talked about it in text messages, that females usually, I use the term get screwed over that you said in this because that's what we talked about. It's just because it's what you said and it made me laugh, but it's true. So we keep it real around here.
Well,
We
we
don't hide
talked
nothing.
about,
Yeah.
yeah, when we talked about ADHD, it was like, oh,
Women.
everything's based off of like men, so
Yeah.
women were
So,
just not getting diagnosed. And I was like reading the autism, and I was like, well, everything's based off men, so women are not getting diagnosed.
and that's where I told you that it's crazy to me because usually men are the stubborn ones. It's like I don't want to go to the doctor. I don't know. I'm not. Nothing's gonna change. And then
And I
here women
agree
are
with
trying.
that.
And then women
And
here
women
are
are trying to
trying
get
to
help,
find
and they're
the
just
answer
like,
and they're not getting it. Yeah. So it's crazy, right? Because guys are
uh,
stubborn.
yes, I completely agree with that statement. But I was like, well, but everything's based off of like men's studies. So women are over there like, well, you're not diagnosing me because it doesn't match my symptoms.
Right.
Um, the mind can also do it. Like stressful life events can trigger the panic disorder. So you can be doing really well in life, never have an anxiety attack in your life, and then something happens. It could be a loss, a separation, a car accident, something, and it just triggers you to start having these attacks. So it's just something that kind of in your life causes the cortisol in your body to skyrocket, and then you kind of have to figure out how to level that out.
Okay.
But then you're starting to have panic attacks, and they can develop into these panic disorders, and you have to be able to get it under control, or it can grow into the actual disorder.
Crazy because yet again something else that falls in from something we've talked about before with the separation, the major life events, loss. So even like I think even with this, the panic, even if it's a good change in life, say you get promoted into a new job and it's great for you and your future and everything like that, but you could also force yourself to panic that you may be not doing good enough or you did something wrong. Like just
Mm-hmm.
it's not always bad things that create these things, guys.
And then you can cause yourself to get it a little bit about both. So if you're somebody who like kind of genetically is susceptible to this, so you have like that physical, but then there's that psychological cause. They can work together and team up against you and just cause mayhem. There's an example of if a person with a panic disorder experiences a racing heartbeat caused by drinking coffee, exercising, and taking a certain medication, they might interpret the symptom as an attack. And then because of their anxiety, they actually bring that attack on. So they just kind of feel like an attack's coming. And then in their mind, they're
And they
like, oh, I'm
panic
having an
about that
attack. So
attack.
it starts.
They panic about their attack and then it happens.
But they were feeling their heart racing because they just loaded themselves up with caffeine. They were exercising, and then probably the medication they were taking had caffeine in it as well. So they were just pumping themselves full of what
That's
their heart was like, just like
caffeine is a
asking to.
caffeine is a stimulant.
Um,
So
so you just have to watch doing that stuff too. So you can throw yourself into these disorders as well. Like if you don't watch and take care of that. I was actually doing something like that at the beginning of the year. I have higher cortisol levels, and then I was drinking coffee on an empty stomach, and then my heart was just like pounding out of my chest, and I was like, why is this happening? I wasn't like sending myself into panic attacks, but it was concerning to me because I was like, I've never done this before.
talked about this
And
every day to figure it out.
and I
Right?
had to start eating a high protein breakfast with my coffee to take the chest pains away.
Counter the
I just couldn't
caffeine.
to counter because I already had the high cortisol level, and then adding caffeine to it was just like putting too much strain on my heart, and it couldn't take all of that at once. A little bit of a different thing, but like kind of the same aspect of you can be intaking stuff that your body can't handle, and then you stress about it and cause it to be worse. Um, One of the big things I was looking at for this is when you start to go get help for it, panic disorders typically take at least 20 sessions with a counselor to even just get a plan put together. So that's like just to get
20
an understand.
sessions. Wow. It takes time.
So that's like half a year, a little less than half a year, just to even get a plan put together for you to like start working towards getting it under control. And then that's you putting in work at home, outside the sessions, and then from there, it's however long that you feel comfortable like leaving your counselor or having less sessions.
Okay.
And we talked about it a little bit in the first few pages of situational avoidance with the panic disorder. With you associate your panic attacks or the disorder with stuff, so you start avoiding like driving. If you have a fear with something that's gonna happen outside, you stop going outside altogether. So that would be your situational avoidance.
Okay. We had C Muffin ask, what is your take on panic disorders and epilepsy combined? I personally don't know a whole lot about epilepsy. That is something that we can also take notes on and go over later on too. That's Is epilepsy more of a physical rather than a mental disorder?
Yeah, it'd be more physical. I mean, like it's brain,
Right.
but it is more of like a physical with the brain. But I could do research on it, so I
Okay.
don't know a lot about it.
But we have C Muffin says I have both. So this is something good. We've got a lot of relation in chat today, which is huge. That means we're reaching out and we're getting people to come through.
I think the little bit I do know about epilepsy, I think they could be triggering to each other
Okay.
because I know epilepsy stress can induce the seizures. So they can, I guess, be not good for each other. I don't know like the right words to want to say. Like the more you're stressing yourself out, or the more these panic disorders are happening or panic attacks are happening, you could be adding more to the epilepsy. Vice versa, you could be worried about the epilepsy and throwing yourselves into more of the panic attacks. So they could be kind of working against each other.
Okay.
But I don't know enough about the epilepsy to know how it like impacts the brain.
Muffin, if you don't mind, would you share with us how they go together and affect you so that we might have a better understanding why you do that? Keep going. When that comes up, I'll let
That's
you know.
all.
Oh, that's all. Okay. So epilepsy affects your neuro, and in mine, it is my right frontal lobe, and because of that type of epilepsy, I can't get help except through behavioral medication type therapy or modification. Sorry, type therapy. I cannot take any type of meds. Wow. So it is brain. We did find that out through neuro. So right frontal lobe, that type of epilepsy doesn't allow them to take meds or get any help besides through behavior modification therapy. This is stuff I don't know nothing about personally. As we've disclosed before, none of us are medical. This is just off statistical knowledge that we have researched. Alyssa is going to school to get further in this to deserve a degree or earn a degree and everything, so she can actually be of more assistance in that category. I myself am just an advocate. I'm here you guys need me, we're all here if you guys need anybody. We try to do this to provide more information and awareness to all the things that people do struggle with mental health. And with everything going on, I think Alyssa's internet's bugging out a little bit. She's skipping all over the screen over here.
Um, I can definitely do more research on like epilepsy. I do
Okay.
know how like some of the medicines do interact like with each other within like the mental health aspect of the world. I just don't know.
So Muffin
I
says
don't.
they've been struggling with it for over 18 years. So Muffin, quick question: with your epilepsy, does it create seizures? Well, actually, I can't ask that question. That's a violation of HIPAA. So don't answer that. Do not answer that. We do not want to break HIPAA anywhere in here and get in trouble for anything like that. Um, I don't even know where to go from there. Uh, we're gonna edit that out, chat. Yeah, that one caught me off guard. Me myself trying to do just a little snippet to relate, and then I realized that I was breaking a huge rule. Um, we are serious. Okay, so if you don't mind sharing, that's on you. But I personally can't ask that question to have you answer it, even though I am HIPAA certified. But everybody in chat and this stuff is supposed to be confidential. Anyways, if you don't mind, then we would love to have you share. And here's F3. We are now partnered. Excited. The future. So this is way better than Red Bull, just so you know.
I don't eat energy drink. I don't drink energy drinks.
The question was if your type of epilepsy triggers seizures. Because I know some forms of epilepsy do trigger seizures, and I know my mom had that, and she had seizures a lot when I was a kid before she passed away. The phone's blowing up. Jeez, oh Pete. Okay. Guys, as we wait for the response here, I just want to thank everybody that's been here tonight and that's participated in the chat. We do like to do this interactive chat because it does give us a chance to relate to people and get some more information from those that do like to share, or I won't say struggle, but do live their lives with these disorders, or like autism is the spectrum of autism, and we can learn a little bit more dealing with one-on-one or actual like experiences with people. The relation is way better than what we read off paper, and it means a lot to us that you guys come through here and share daily with us when we do these. So just want to thank you for that. And Muffin says, I have focal and grand mal seizures. I have them in my sleep and on a daily basis, but they are somewhat under control. Wow. See, as I said, the relation to somebody in chat, it makes it big that we can learn these things and actually get a real life relation to them so we can have a better understanding ourselves. Sorry, Muffin, that you deal with that. If there's anything we can do, I know that we're not medical professionals or anything. Even if you just need somebody to talk to or just vent or anything like that when you're having a hard day, we are here. As you can see, we're not alone. We are here. And hell, if you guys just need to sit in silence and talk, like, call me and sit in silence. No, I'm here. My phone's always on. I've given out my personal phone number on stream many times, and I'm not scared to do it again. Because this is what we are here for. We're not worried about what time of the day you call or when you call. It's just more about being here for everybody.
Like I said, I'll do more research on how they do interact, and
Okay.
not that I can give you any actual like guidance as a counselor right now, but I can give you like in the studies that I find how people have kind of guided people or different types of tips and tricks that people have used to kind of help you with that.
Awesome. We got a couple of things that we gotta put in the notebook. We can find what maybe the next topic may be for the next show. We do have big news, guys. On more of a different note here, we do have Grayson Rogers that is going to be coming on podcast to join us here when we decide the next date, because 2 weeks from now is Thanksgiving, so we're obviously not going to have a podcast during Thanksgiving, so you guys won't miss while you guys are out with your families and enjoying that. Another announcement: we are still raising money to adopt families for the holidays, guys. We're just over $600 currently. Our goal now is $1,500. That way we can match at least what we did last year and try to continue growing and doing more for the families in the community or around the world even. If you guys do know of any families that are struggling or that we can help or that may need help with putting food on the table, clothes on the kids' backs, anything that we can do with that, we are wanting to. We're not very big, and of course we can't help everybody, but we want to help where we can. And right now, this is what we did last year. It's gonna be, I think, one of our annual things to raise money to adopt families, because this is one of the hardest times of the year. It's cold out in a lot of states. A lot of people don't have coats, sweatshirts, things that they need, or if they don't have their heat bill paid. In any way that we can help, we want to. Another way, Jerry just put it in chat. That link leads to our sign up for PUBG. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but PUBG tourney is going to be based 50% of the proceedings that is raised is going to go back to the pot for those teams competing. The other 50% is going to come towards us in Fly High Wi-Fi to adopt families. So it's just another way for us to try to build the pot a little bit to keep people entertained with PUBG. And then the other portion of the money is going to go to the charity and helping everybody try to adopt families for this holiday. Alyssa, you got anything else?
Yeah, I just want to kind of same thing you're saying, reiterate. Don't be afraid to reach out. I had a friend reach out today. She's struggling this holiday with grief. All she needed was a hug. So I drove over and gave her a hug. Sometimes it's as simple as that. So don't be afraid to reach out.
I agree with that. Even some random stranger, you can see they get their head down low as they're walking by you. Just hello. That might be the reason they fight for another day, just by somebody noticing them. Say hello. They took time out of their day to say hello. Could just change their whole day. You never know what anybody's going through at any moment. That's one of the struggles. So again, my phone number's in chat. Anybody that needs it, always on. And then also all our DMs, the Fly High Wi-Fi, Discord, the Twitter, Facebook, even, guys. We have them all. You guys can absolutely reach out and we'll do what we can. So I don't have anything else. Jerry in chat, you got anything? Mostly you good?
I'm good.
All right, guys, that's going to conclude this week's mental health podcast. Be on the lookout for a further date, as we got Thanksgiving coming up on our normal scheduled day. So we will either be the following week after Thanksgiving or 2 weeks past Thanksgiving. And distracted by chat. Thanks, Jerry. So again, on behalf of Fly High Wi-Fi, myself, Alyssa, Jer Bear, Ben, I don't know where you are, probably busy with life. Just want to say thank you guys all for being here, and I hope you have a great night. Love you. Bye.
Bye.